Here is a picture of me pointing at the buildings at the center that I work at in the mountains. And this is on the trail. So I also consider myself a part of that ecosystem because when it's not a pandemic, I'm up there a lot doing my work. But now I've been doing everything virtually. And I love to go hiking and exploring and learning and teaching and all those things in the ecosystem. So I'm going to stop my share again so I can see you guys all introduce yourselves. Does anyone want to go first? Just share your name, where you live, and what your ecosystem is like or something you like to do outside. How about Jonathan? Nice.
My name is Jonathan. I'm 11 years old, and I live in El Rancho near Poaque.
Nice.
And what my ecosystem is like, we have like a forest right next to our yard, and it's just really big, and we sometimes go just exploring in there. So I guess that's my favorite thing to do. And is that all?
Yeah, so that's great. Thanks. Who wants to go next? And thanks to the people joining, we're just introducing ourselves. Faith, go ahead.
Okay, I'm unmuted, right?
Yes.
Okay. My name is Faith. I am 13. I live in Las Lunas, and my ecosystem, we have a lot of ditches around here. So my dad has a 4-wheeler, and sometimes we'll go riding on the ditch banks. But cool. I like to ride my bike for a favorite outdoor activity, I guess.
Nice. Thanks for sharing. Let's see, how about Naomi? Do you want to go?
Hey, my name is Naomi. I'm 14 years old. I live up in Albuquerque, and we live close to a big open space mesa area, so sometimes we'll walk my little doggy over there. And that's basically it.
Cool. Ariana?
My name is Ariana. I'm 16 years old. I live in El Rancho, next to Huaque. What my ecosystem is like, we have lots of trees. There are lots of weeds and everything, but we still have an area to play around. And my favorite activity, I guess, would be, I like to just walk around the whole place, get some fresh air, and sometimes walk with my dog. So that's cool.
Yeah, that sounds nice. Let's see, do we have Isaac and Robert? You guys hear me?
Further questions?
So we're introducing ourselves. So my name's Fiana, if you didn't hear that part. I live in Albuquerque, and I like to go hiking out in the mountains. So you're introducing yourself. You can say how old you are if you want, and then where you live and what the ecosystem around you is like. And if you want something you like to do outside.
My name is Isaac. I'm 15. We live in Albuquerque. Where's the like around here? I don't know. Open, I guess, mountainy. And I don't really go outside or like play outside. So.
All right, thanks. Oh. And then is that Robert? Are you taking the class too?
Yeah.
Awesome. Do you want to introduce yourself?
I'm Robert. I'm 17. And what else are we doing?
So you live in Albuquerque, I know that. So what do you like to do when you're outside?
I don't know. I don't really like doing anything outside.
No? Okay. That's okay. And let's see, how about Adrian?
I'm Nathaniel.
Oh, okay.
Okay. I'm Nathaniel. I'm 13. I live in Albuquerque. And what was the next question? What's the lifestyle here?
Like, how would you describe the area you live in, and what do you like to do outside?
Oh, okay. It's kind of like what Isaac said. It's kind of mountainy and stuff like that.
Hmm. And do you like to do anything outside?
Yeah, when I go outside, I like jumping on the trampoline.
Sounds fun.
Yeah.
All right, thanks. And Audrey.
Hey, my name is Audrey. I live in Tijeras, New Mexico. We live next to a huge national forest, and there's a lot of bears and mountain lions here. My favorite thing to do outside is rock climb.
Cool. And the center that I work at is actually right near Tijeras. It's in Cedar Crest.
Cool.
And lastly, Raylyn. You there? There you go. So your name, your age, if you want to say, where you live and how you describe it, and then something you like to do outside.
My name's Raylyn. I'm 13. I live in Belen. The Rio Grande and Whitfield is like right around the corner, and I don't like going outside.
All right. Thanks for sharing. All right, sounds good. So
I'm going to introduce myself too really quick, Fiana.
Do it.
Hold on. Okay.
Sorry,
so,
I forgot about you.
You're fine. It's okay. It's totally fine. No worries. So my name's Sarah. Miss Sarah. You can call me Sarah, whatever. I am the youth program director for New Mexico Wildlife Federation, and I also run Nature Niños. And I live in Albuquerque, but I live down on the Bosque. So we live walking distance of Alameda open space. So we like to spend a lot of time there. And my favorite thing to do outside is also probably just hiking and exploring. Just being outside and getting some fresh air is always a good thing for your mind, body, and soul. All right, it's all you, Fiana.
All right. Okay, so I'm going to bring out my PowerPoint again, and I will be switching to a couple different screens for videos and things. So hopefully we'll be able to see all of them. If you can't at any point, Sarah, if you could just let me know, or anyone can unmute yourself to just let me know if you can't hear or see something. And for those of you that missed the very beginning intro, we're going to be talking about climate change and about forest fires today, and how forest fires relate to climate change. So this was my little intro slide with where I live and work. And I wanted to start off with what you all know about climate change. So if you know, if you just have a definition of it, if you know what is happening or why it's happening, we don't have to get into too much detail yet, but if anyone wants to share just briefly what they know about it, would anyone like to share something? And I can't see you guys right now. I always have this trouble. Stop sharing again. Anyone want to share? You can unmute yourself. How many of you have heard of climate change? Just raise your hand. Awesome. And how many of you would say you know something about it? Like you have some idea of what it is. You don't have to share, but just raise your hand if you have some idea. Cool. And raise your hand if you have some idea of like maybe why it's important or what it's doing to parts of our planet or parts of our ecosystem. If you have some idea of some of those things, raise your hand. All right, some of you. All right, so what I'm going to do then, if no one wants to share aloud right now, is we're going to do a little thing called a Jamboard. Has anyone used Jamboard before on Google? No? Okay. So it's a little like, you can like a sticky board, a virtual sticky board, and it's a way for us to put our ideas and what we know onto that Jamboard. So let me bring that up. And okay, so you should all see a picture now. This is actually taken by a drone a few years ago at the place that I work. You can see me and my coworkers down in the bottom right. And I thought this was a good photo to kind of illustrate, there's this mountain ecosystem and then humans using it. and to think about the causes of climate change. So if you look on the left side of the screen here, there's a little sticky note tool. It's this little square with the lines on it underneath the arrow. And if you click on that, you can type in whatever you want. So one cause you know about climate change, something that causes the climate to be changing. You can change the color if you want, and then just hit save. So I'll put in, let's see, cars is something that I know that causes climate change or contributes. So I hit save, and then you can just hit cancel or click outside the box when you're done, and then drag it to wherever you want on the screen. So I am actually going to, oh, I'm not signed in. 1 second, so I'll sign in so I can actually share the link with you guys. And you might hear my cat a little in the background. She wants to be a part of the program. All right, so I'm going to copy this link into the chat, and then if you want to add anything to the Jamboard like I just showed you, you can do that. So I'm going to stop sharing it, and I'm going to put the link in the chat. If you just click on that, it should open in a new window or a new tab, so you don't have to leave the Google Meet. And just go in there, and anything you can think of, anything that you know about that can add to or cause climate change, you can put, even if you're not sure, you don't have to be right. So everyone click that link, and I don't see anyone joining yet. Let me know if you're having trouble getting in there.
And Faith, if you need help, you can verbally tell us and I can add your comments in if you need help, okay?
Yeah, and I'll say everything out loud too.
Yeah, let me try to figure this out, but I might take you up on that.
Okay.
So are you guys able to click on that link and get in there? No, it's not working. It might be because I signed in after. Oh, one person joined. Let me try. I'll put it in the chat
No,
again.
so it should work. So I joined. That's
okay.
I'm the one who joined. So if you guys go to the
chat. I
chat.
know. I'm sending it to you. That's why we're okay.
Oh.
There we go.
It was a private message just to me. Sorry,
yep,
guys.
it was just to you. So now go ahead and click the link you see in the chat now.
There we go. That makes sense.
Oh, geez. All right, so now you should be able to get into that Jamboard. And again, you can use that sticky note tool on the left with the square and the lines and add anything you can think of that might contribute to or cause or make climate change worse. So I see some of you joining. And if you can't think of anything, we'll just discuss it as a group. So cars, the reason I put that is because they have to burn gasoline, right? And that comes from oil. And the oil, when they burn the gasoline, it actually goes into the air and it releases carbon dioxide, and that can heat up the earth. And we'll talk in a minute about why that happens. So anything besides cars? I see pollution, yeah, so other forms of pollution, maybe from smokestacks and factories. Can anyone think of any other types of pollution, or any other ways that we use oil or gas or other fossil fuels?
Go ahead, Faith.
Faith, do you want to add?
Okay, so my dad is a landscaper, so I was just gonna say like machines that we use, like we use lifts and tractors and lawnmowers and for his business.
Yep.
Landscaping machines.
Perfect. Yep, and someone just added that to the Jamboard. Awesome.
Yep, I added that for you, Faith. If you think of anything else, let me know.
I can think of something where I'm using all through the winter so that I don't freeze to death. That would be my heat, right? So heating. Air conditioning, yeah. And how are we seeing at night? Or how are we using our computers? We have to plug them in sometimes, right? So we need to use electricity. So I'm going to add electricity to this. I see someone added air conditioning. Awesome. Anything else?
No, but I'm going to stop you really quick. I just added somebody else to the class. So just
Oh, okay.
so you know, Kiddo Jarjusi, we are coming up with ideas that contribute to global warming. So if you look in the group chat, there's a link for what's called a Jamboard, and you can go and you can add your ideas for what you know might contribute to global warming. Okay. Otherwise, you can just sit here and listen and get used to class until you're ready to participate. Okay.
And I'm putting the link in the chat again in case it doesn't show easily. Any other ideas? And if anyone wants to just share aloud, you can do that too. Yeah, Ariana?
Greenhouse gases? Greenhouses?
Yeah, so so the greenhouse gases, which aren't actually from actual greenhouses, but what a greenhouse gas is anything that kind of absorbs heat and makes the earth hotter. So yeah, that's really what we're talking about. Oops, I didn't mean to put greenhouse. Oh, someone else put it. Awesome. So that's really what we're talking about with causes of climate change or global warming, is all these things that are giving off or burning or using greenhouse gases. So I want to show you guys a little video that'll give kind of an introduction if you're not really sure what climate change is caused by or what's really happening. We're just going to watch this like 1.5 minute video. Oh, and let me reshare. All right, so you guys should be able to see my video screen.
Does more than catch errors. With Grammarly, you can find really good, no, perfect words that make your writing sharp.
All right, and you can hear it, right? Sarah, can you hear it?
Yeah, you're good. We can hear you.
Okay, so here we go.
Activities from pollution to overpopulation. Human activities from pollution to overpopulation are driving up the Earth's temperature and fundamentally changing the world around us. The main cause is a phenomenon known as the greenhouse effect. Gases in the atmosphere, such as water vapor, carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, and chlorofluorocarbons, let the sun's light in, but keep some of the heat from escaping, like the glass walls of a greenhouse. The more greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, the more heat gets trapped, strengthening the greenhouse effect and increasing the Earth's temperature. Human activities, like the burning of fossil fuels, have increased the amount of CO2 in the atmosphere by more than 1/3 since the Industrial Revolution. The rapid increase in greenhouse gases in the atmosphere has warmed the planet at an alarming rate. While Earth's climate has fluctuated in the past, atmospheric carbon dioxide hasn't reached today's levels in hundreds of thousands of years.
So just to pause that for a second. So this graph is showing, it's just, it would go up and down over time naturally, but it wasn't until very recently, until we were really burning more of those fossil fuels for heat and transportation and energy, that's when our carbon dioxide levels really shot up really quickly. And there's the whole graph. So everything was up until 400,000 years ago up to the present. It would, it would have these periods of cooling of less carbon dioxide and more carbon dioxide, but it was very obvious based on the research that scientists have done that now we have much more carbon dioxide in our atmosphere. And those causes that we were just thinking about are why. So the more we burn oil and gas and coal and all of these things, the more we have added to those greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. And then the gases, as the video showed, just to kind of sum up, they absorbed heat and they keep heat into our Earth. We want that, we want greenhouse gases. We want there to be heat trapped on Earth, or it would be an extremely cold place. But we don't want this much heat. We don't want too many of those greenhouse gases in our atmosphere. Any questions on that? Or anything anyone's confused about with what climate change is? And I can't see hand raises right now, if you could help, Sarah.
Looks like
Anyone here?
everybody has a good understanding. I don't see anybody raising their hands or
Okay.
wanting to chat. Yep.
All right, and you guys can see my slideshow now, right?
Yep, we can see it.
Awesome. So this is just a graph. I found a pie chart that shows that electricity, so production of fossil fuels for electricity is 29% of our usage or of the burning of fossil fuels, and the release of greenhouse gas emissions. Transportation's number 2, so it's almost the same, 27% for not just cars, but trains, of course, and then airplanes are a really big one. They emit a lot of fossil fuels, or they use a lot of fossil fuels and emit a lot of emissions. And then industry is next, so that could include businesses, mining, logging, any kinds of industries or kind of companies and things like that. And then commercial and residential, so that would be people's houses and business buildings and cities and things like that. And then agriculture is 9% of contribution, so that's the least, but it's still a decent chunk that it is also using. So does anyone have any thoughts of something we could do or that humans could do to reduce the emissions in any of these areas? In our electricity or transportation or in our homes? Is there anything we could do?
Now, I know half of you on this class, and I know half of you are super brilliant and actually have amazing ideas. And so I do expect that you guys are participating in these classes and sharing with Miss Fiona as she's asking you questions, because I think if you could really think about it, I know you guys could, each of you on this class could come up with at least one thing to share, whether it be in the group chat or saying it out loud. So I'm going to challenge you guys.
Say, but you can share in the chat.
Yeah, you don't have to say it out loud if you're not comfortable saying it out loud. But if you say it in the group chat, then I can share it. But I do expect that like all of you guys are trying your best to participate and kind of share some of your input, because you guys are the next generation. You're the ones that are going to make a difference in this. And so we need you to understand and participate in these conversations.
Yeah, or even, if you're thinking about it right now, that's good too. I'll think of something I can think of is at my work, we recently had new buildings installed in the mountains, and they put up a bunch of solar panels. And so those solar panels can take in the sun's energy and use that for our electricity instead of having to use fossil fuels like oil or gas or coal. So that's one example. Anyone else have an example?
I'm going to share a quick little example too. Like it's a small thing, and that's why I think sometimes even in my head, and maybe you have this problem too, Fiana, is I'm always thinking of like, what are the big things that you can do? But there's also really small things that you can do that can make differences. And, if we can, we'll try to ride our bike somewhere instead of taking our car. And it's not often because we don't live super close to some of the places we need to go. But if we can, then we'll take our bike instead of driving our car every once in a while.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, or getting an electric car, a hybrid car, which uses less energy than gas, or it gives off less fuels and emissions than gas. Or let's see, what else? You could eat more locally, so that's something people often don't think of. Or eating less meat actually can reduce the amount of methane and other things. So you don't have to totally give up meat, but if you eat a little less of it, or if you eat, I know Sarah does a ton of that in their family. They use local, absolutely, you grow your own things, you have your own animals. So as local as you can be from farmers markets can really be useful and help. Yeah, Jonathan said less fossil fuels. So anything that reduces fossil fuels. So you could actually even just make your house better insulated. Or there's a bill right now going through our New Mexico Congress to make any new buildings be much more energy efficient. So they don't even have to use solar power necessarily yet, but if they can keep in the energy better, if they keep in the heat well, if they cool off easily in the summer, then you don't need to use as much heating and cooling. So that really helps. And if you guys feel like, I know by my windows, you can feel the draft in the winter, like the cold coming in, and that's a sign that it's not very well insulated. So when people get new windows or just add things to better insulate, that can really help. All right, so I want to move us along. I'm going to go to this slide. So this is globally. It's showing that based on what scientists would expect to happen with our temperature on Earth, we would have seen it, go up and down, but it would have stayed actually pretty steady over since 1900. So for 100 years, it would have stayed pretty steady, but it would have then actually gotten lower a little bit in the mid 1900s or so. But with the human factors and how much carbon we've been releasing and all these things we've been doing, we would expect the temperature to go up. And then the black line is actually showing the temperature has gone up in the same way we would expect it to. So right along with us using more cars and more fossil fuels, the temperature has also gone up at the same time in the same pattern. So that's how scientists have figured out that this climate change, this global warming, is actually caused by people. Because it follows the pattern of what we're doing and the fossil fuels we're or the greenhouse gas emissions we're releasing. It's in that same pattern. And then in New Mexico, it's kind of the same thing. We've had temperatures go up and down over the years. This is from 1970 to 2015. So, things change year to year, but overall, we're seeing an increase in temperature. Overall, it's going up and up and up since 1970 and before. So how can we study climate? The first thing we can do, or we ourselves or scientists, anybody, can start by studying the weather. So we can just make observations of what the weather is like today. We can use a rain gauge. I don't know, are you guys seeing yourselves? I'll move this because I'm trying to see you at the same time. So there's a rain gauge here where you can collect water and just see how much it's rained. This thing is called a kestrel, and I have one here with me. This is a cool weather station in your pocket. You can actually just go outside with it and get the temperature, humidity, all kinds of readings, and all kinds of other tools you can use. And then I want us to just take a minute and think about the weather today. So I would a lot of times have my 5th graders do this when I teach 5th grade programs. Like, what does the air temperature feel like if anyone's been outside? If you can look out a window, what is the sky or the clouds doing? Is there any wind? Is there any humidity? So does it feel dry or wet in the air? You can even check soil to see, if it's wet on the ground or a couple inches underground. So has anyone been outside today and want to share what it's like by their house?
Cold.
Cold. I'll say by me, it's sunny, bright blue sky, and that's different than yesterday because it was really overcast yesterday. Does anyone see any trees moving in the wind out there if you could have a window by you? Looks pretty still near me. I don't see any branches moving at all.
I see the same thing Fiana sees. I see lots of sun, no clouds, no wind. It looks like it's going to be a good day.
Yeah. What was that? Oh,
The sun is here, but it's at the same time dimmed because of the clouds.
Ooh, good description. Yeah. And sometimes it's not even clouds, but it'll be like hazy or foggy. A lot of times that happens here in Albuquerque, I'm sure in most of your areas when there's fires going on, when it's in the heart of fire season.
And Ariana raised her hand too. I don't know if you want to share, love.
Yeah, I was gonna say it was sunny outside. It was no wind, no clouds. Actually, it was actually pretty nice, except it was cold a little bit.
I do think it's crazy to think about how we're describing today's weather and to know what kind of weather is going to be here in a mere 48 hours. We're looking at a very drastic change in weather. So it's good that we get outside and enjoy the sunshine today.
Yep. And those big ups and downs like that can have to do with climate change too. And next week's class, we're going to talk a lot about how that might affect plants and animals and the living things in our environment. But so basically you take this weather data, so what we just discussed, and then you can also use, you can also use weather stations. Some of you might even have a weather station at your home. And that is just like a little thing like this. We had one at our work. You can hook it up to a computer, or it can send signals to satellite, and you can actually get the quantitative data. So what we just did was qualitative, where you're just kind of describing things in words or observing things. And then quantitative is using numbers. And then from the numbers, of course, you can make graphs like on this computer. You can look at trends, you can calculate averages, and you can start to get an idea of what the weather is like over time. This is just an example of a graph I made of precipitation at the Sandia Mountain Natural History Center in the mountains, where you can see that certain months of the year, like January through June, don't have a whole lot of snow or rain. And then July and August have a huge amount because we get our monsoon season, and then it drops off and you get kind of less and less as the fall goes on. And then the difference between weather and climate is really that weather is day to day. So weather is these observations we're making right now or over a shorter period of time. And then climate is when you look at those trends and those averages and that weather over long periods of time. So scientists usually look for at least 30 years. And this link, I'll send this to you guys later, but it's a really cool thing I found from NOAA, from the federal government, that you can actually look at those trends for places all throughout the country. And so you could compare your current weather to what's actually gone on for 30 years. And that's how scientists start to figure out that the current weather, you know, how that, if things are changing, they look at those trends and they see how, you know, things are heating up over time. We're not just going to look at one day or 1 week or 1 year even. We've got to look at a lot of data. And other ways to study climate, if you don't have the weather data, or if you're looking way in the past, you might have heard of doing tree core samples. I've got one right here that you can actually look at the lines. And of course, that tells us an age of a tree, but it can also tell us when there were droughts and when there were floods and things like that by how far apart or close together the rings are on the sample. Or you can take a core of the ground, of sediment or rock, or ice cores like they do in Antarctica or the Arctic. And I wanted to show you guys a cool tool. So this is, you should see a screen coming up. You can click on any state here. So I'm going to click on New Mexico. Some of us live in Albuquerque. So what it's going to show us is the average summer temperature now compared with the temperature that it might be in the year 2100. So if we were alive still in 2100, then our climate in Albuquerque would actually be more like the climate of Laredo, Texas, in southern Texas. It would go from 90 degrees Fahrenheit to about 100 degrees. So think about how that would be to play outside and do the things you like to do if you like to go outside, or how that might be for the animals that are outside. Let's see, we had some of us living by Berlin in the kind of south of Albuquerque. So if you do the South Valley, which is a little closer to you guys, maybe. Oh, it also just brought us to Laredo. But if you lived up closer to Santa Fe, the weather is going to be more like Missouri City, Texas, which is on the east end. So from 82 to 92, again, a 10-degree jump. So that's what I think all these show. If you were in Roswell or near there, it would go from about 93 to 104. Oh, that sounds fun. 104 degrees. So that's what would happen if we don't fix things. But of course, we still can make things better. We still can do something about climate change where it's not going to get that hot, and we're not going to have 27 degrees over 105 in Albuquerque. Let's hope it doesn't get to that. So the idea is that we have to be looking for things now that we can do that will help slow this change, like using less fossil fuels, using solar power, those things we started to talk about a few minutes ago. And here's just a couple facts. New Mexico is the 6th fastest warming state in the country. So we do really have to be thinking about this. And in the Southwest in general, it's been warmer than in any comparable period in at least 600 years. So it's been a very long time since it's been this warm, if it's ever been this warm. We're not, I mean, in places maybe way in the past, but this is not normal, basically. So now we're going to get into forest fires. So forest fires actually do relate to climate change, and we'll get into that in a minute. But first, let's just say a few things that cause a forest fire. Like what can cause a fire to start? And again, you can type in the chat, raise your hand. Shea, is it?
It's Shay.
Shay, okay.
Cigarette butt.
Yeah, so someone throws their cigarette out the window in a dry place. Oops. Anything else?
Dead trees.
Yeah. Well, so those can be fuel for the fire. So that would be kind of a risk factor, and we'll get into those in a minute.
Okay.
Anything else? So dead
Droughts, maybe?
trees equal fuel. Yeah, drought would help. Yeah, you guys are getting into the risk. So I'm actually going to go to that page, but I'm going to add one to this first is lightning. That would be a natural way. Another unnatural way, campfires. You leave a campfire lit. And then moving into our risk factors, like you guys are talking about, one of you mentioned drought. So is drought going to, let's play a little game on screen. Put your thumb up if you think yes, and put your thumb down if you think no. So we're gonna decide if each of these things on the screen are
Hey,
going
Fiona,
to,
I'm gonna
yeah.
stop you really quick. Do you have other little screens up on your screen? Like we can see little black screens.
That's because I'm trying to look at you guys at the same time. So I'm going to minimize that. Okay. Does it look normal now or?
Yeah, now it's just a little tiny one. Now they can see the whole slide. Before that,
Cool.
It was breaking off a chunk of the slide. So.
Yeah, I was worried about that. I'm not used to using Zoom when I'm teaching.
You're fine.
Okay.
No problem.
So drought, is that, and you're gonna have to tell me, Sarah, if we see, because I can't
no
see
worries.
you guys now.
I will. Yeah, no worries.
So does drought increase or decrease the risk of fire? Are you more likely to have fire or less likely to have fire?
So more likely thumbs up, less likely
thumbs
down. And it looks across the board, we got thumbs up.
All right, yep, I would agree. The drier it is, the more likely fire. And of course, drought has to do with climate change. So since it's getting hotter, it's also getting drier over time. And so I'm gonna put a little sun there because climate change is affecting the fact that we're in so much drought. There's a lot of drought, of years of drought in New Mexico. Now heat, will that increasing temperature from climate change, will that increase fire risk or decrease fire risk?
Looks like we have thumbs up across the board.
All right, I would agree. How about rain? If we get more rain, is that going to increase fire risk or decrease fire risk?
Yep, thumbs down across the board.
Agreed. And that's also something that climate change is affecting, unfortunately. It's making less rain and less precipitation over time. So it is actually going to cause less rain, which will then increase the fire risk because it'll be more drought. Humidity, if you think it's more moist in the air, if we have high humidity, is that going to increase or decrease risk of fire?
Definitely decrease, it looks like.
Yep, the more humidity, the less fire. And once again, climate change is decreasing humidity, so that's going to do the opposite to the fire risk. Wind, if it's a windy day, is that going to increase or decrease the risk of fire or the risk of fire spreading, maybe?
Looks like we have thumbs up.
Yep, so the more wind, it might not cause the fire, but if there's a fire that starts, or if there's a campfire lit still that someone leaves there, it can spread that fire really quickly. Thunderstorms, do you think that's going to increase or decrease forest fire risk?
We're kind of split on this one, actually.
Perfect, because I'm split also. I was going to put both because they can decrease the risk because it's raining, but they can increase the risk because of lightning. And sometimes we get a lot of those storms in New Mexico where there's lots of lightning and there's not much rain, and those can actually make the fire risk worse. Yeah, so it could go both ways with that. And climate change is expected to cause more violent storms and more stronger storms. And I could actually add our climate change thing to rain because it's going to reduce rain, it's going to reduce humidity, and it could even cause more wind because of storms. If we have dense forest, a lot of trees close together, do you think that increases or decreases fire risk?
Looks like we pretty much have thumbs up.
Yep, so the closer the trees are together, the easier that fire can spread from tree to tree. How about if we thin the trees? If people go in and cut down trees and like make it more open, will that increase or decrease risk?
Decrease.
Very good. Prescribed burns, if we actually burn areas of fire or areas of forest on purpose, if we set small fires to clear out underbrush and kind of get rid of some of the trees, do you think that will increase or decrease future fire risk? That's a tricky one. We'll get more into that in a minute.
Yeah, it's split.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep, could do both, because if you're lighting a fire, of course, it could cause the fire to spread if you're not careful. But people that go in and set these burns try to be really careful. And if the fire is controlled and they burn out like small areas, I'll show you guys a video in a minute of this, then I could actually lower the risk of future fire. And I'll just finish this up. So invasive plants can grow in a lot in an area, and they can actually increase fire risk because there's a lot of them, and they spread really fast and they grow all over the place. So they provide a lot of fuel for the fire. And then camping. Do you think people going out camping could increase or decrease fire risk?
Looks like we have increase.
Yeah, if they light a campfire and leave it, of course, if they're careful, then it shouldn't have any effect on fire risk. Or even people being out there could decrease it if they, noticed a fire. But yeah, if they're being careless, then it could increase it. So I want to show you guys, this is a map of the Las Conchas wildfire. So I don't know if anyone's heard of this, or I don't think any of you none of you said you lived up by Santa Fe, right? Or Los Alamos. Those of you in Milwaukee are sort of in that direction, but not really. So near Los Alamos, Santa Clara Pueblo, and Cochiti, this huge fire started in 2011, and it became the largest wildfire in the history of New Mexico. And then in the next year, you got an even bigger fire. There was one near Reserve, New Mexico, and southwestern New Mexico, in the Gila. And then there was one in Ruidoso, the Little Bear Fire. So that one actually burned over 250 buildings, including a lot of people's houses. So if you have high fire risk and you have forests that have a lot of trees in them, they're very dense, then you get this high risk of wildfire, of fires that get out of control. And wildfires can be really devastating on an ecosystem. This is a big fire cloud of that Las Conchas fire. You can see there's a building right nearby, and a lot of that glow in the background from the sun trying to peek through that fire cloud. So they can get huge. And then this is what it looked like at the Las Conchas fire after the fire was out. Just barely any trees. You see little sticks of trunks, very little life left, really destroyed. And what do you think this would do to an ecosystem? Any ideas? Or I'm going to show you guys, but if anyone has an idea of like what this is going to do to our natural ecosystem or how it'll hurt it, you can share.
Well, there's not a lot of trees, which means the birds can't live in the trees anymore, so it kind of affects a lot of the animals' life.
Yeah, good one. Yep. And like I said, we'll talk a lot more about animals next week too, but definitely if they're not going to have good shelter or good trees to nest in anymore, they're going to have to go somewhere else. Any other ideas?
A lot of the animals are going to be killed in the fire.
Yep, especially some animals can hide like underground, or if they're really fast, they can run from the fire. But you're right, it does kill animals directly. So that's not good. And going to our next slide, you might be thinking of some of these others. So I put deer there because, yep, they're not going to have places to eat or live anymore. This is a picture of the Mexican spotted owl, which is endangered, and they need trees and things to live in. So it destroys habitat. It can cause big floods after the fire, especially if it's monsoon season. And I see Shay, you raise your hand.
Also, burning the trees produces less oxygen for all the animals.
Yeah, and it also increases the carbon dioxide in the air, which again, carbon dioxide is one of the main gases that causes the earth to heat up. So by having a fire, you actually make climate change worse, and climate change is actually causing more fires. So you get this vicious cycle of, climate change causing fires and fires causing more climate change. And the air quality goes down. So here's impacts to humans, because we all care about that, I hope. This is an area in California in Santa Rosa where just all the buildings were burned in a horrible fire because it made its way into a city. You can, of course, people can die or get hurt. It can destroy their home and schools and buildings. It lowers the air quality, so that can cause a lot of health problems for people, or if you already have asthma or a lung problem or anything, that you don't want to go outside on a day where there's a lot of smoke in the air. It's really harmful. And then that risk of flooding because there's not enough trees left. So that water will just wash over the landscape really fast, and it'll bring a lot of soil with it. And that can flood into cities, and that can cause a lot of problems. And then all of these things cost tons of money to take care of. So the fires are, of course, affecting us all the time. And then just quickly, this is a graph of fires burning in New Mexico. So from 1970 to close to the present, it looks like. We've had an increase in the number of fires burning and how many fires burn each year. But again, some years like here, we had a ton of fires in like the mid 90s, but then it dropped back down and now it's increasing again. And then even more important is not the number of fires, but how much area they're burning. So the number of acres or the amount of land that the fires are actually burning across is increasing a lot. And if anyone's taken math where you've learned about exponential growth, where instead of going in like a line, your growth actually shoots up all of a sudden in a curve, that is what's happening. We're seeing tons more area burned in fire. These are just a couple of facts I found that with climate change, and if we see the continued effects that we've been seeing, we should expect more fires, more intense fires, a longer fire season, going up from 5 to 7 months long, so over half the year where we're having fires. And we've seen areas that are already prone to fires are seeing way, way, way more fires than they used to. And areas that never used to burn at all, like the Bosque near the Rio Grande. I know a lot of you live near that, and I do too. Now there's fires in the Bosque, even though there weren't before. 70% of people in New Mexico, 1.4 million people, actually live in places that have a higher risk of wildfire. So we do have to be worried about these things ourselves. But what can we do about it? So I don't want to leave you guys on this note of like it's gloom and doom and there's nothing we can do, because there are things we can do. And one thing that foresters are doing is these things called prescribed burns that I mentioned earlier. So they're going out into a forest, they're cutting down some of the trees, and then they're lighting it on fire. But they're making sure to do this on a day where the weather is lower fire risk, so there's enough moisture, not a lot of wind. And then they set these fires. So this is actually a video of a prescribed burn done where I work in the Sandias. So they cut all these trees and things down, and then they watch the fire and they try to make sure it does not get out of control. Every once in a while, these will cause wildfires if they're not careful, and that's really bad. But most of the time, they're very careful and they make sure that they don't get out of control, that they just burn kind of the smaller things. And the reason they're doing this, is actually because it's good to have fire in an ecosystem. I know I just got finished saying all the awful things that fire can do, but you actually do want fires. You just want small fires. You want fires that are going to burn some of the older trees, they're going to burn some of the stuff closer to the ground, and they're going to open up space. And this is one of the same areas in the Sandias where that fire was lit. And this is what it looked like about 6 years later. So there's still some dead trees on the ground. There's lots of little trees growing in, right? All these little oak trees. And those wouldn't have been able to grow there if we didn't have the fire to open up space for them and give them light and give them enough, area to grow. And then once you get those little oak trees, we actually get more deer coming to the area because now they have oak trees to eat. Here I'm showing where a tree was cut. So there were a lot of trees cut, but this actually makes it healthier. And it lowers the risk of future fires because now that the forest is more open, if another fire tries to come through, it's not going to be able to jump from tree to tree as easily.
And Shay, if you want to ask your question or give your comment, you can.
She just answered it.
Oh, okay. All right, perfect.
I read your mind. So you can see there's lots of new growth. And in other parts of the forest where there's been prescribed burns, we get like flowers and we get baby trees and we get all kinds of cool stuff coming back into the area. And then after the fire, we monitor it. So we use these things called quadrats where we just take a picture of one spot. And I'll send you guys these videos later. You can watch if you want. Where it shows what happens over the years, as things start to come back and grow in again. And we've got a few minutes left, so I just want to see if you guys have any ideas based on everything I've talked about today, what we could do to reduce our risk of wildfire. So think about all those risk factors we were looking at and how we can make it safer for our homes, neighborhoods, communities, and local ecosystems. So of course, prescribed burns are one way by having small fires. Are there any other ways anyone's thought of? And I'm going to stop sharing and come on back to you guys. Any ideas? Yeah, Naomi?
I guess doing all the things we talked about earlier to stop or slow down climate change, because if that affects making more wildfires, by trying to slow it down, it will slow down that increase you were just talking about on how the wildfire would start happening more often.
Exactly. Excellent. So you put all the steps together. Since climate change, increasing heat and climate change cause more fires, if we help those things or lower those things, then we're also going to lower our risk of bad wildfires, of really worsening fire seasons. Excellent. So again, thinking back to the things we can do for that. So using less cars, walking and biking, probably a lot of things you guys have heard of, but also on big society levels. So even you guys can write to Congress people. You can tell them, that it's important that we switch to renewable resources, that we start using solar power, or that we have enough bike paths in our cities for people to use, or that we have good local food that's going to help, and so that food doesn't have to be trucked in from across the country. So there's a lot of bigger things that we're hoping that our politicians and leaders and communities can do also. And so if we support those things, then that can really help. Any other ideas? Faith, did you want to share?
Making sure that when you go camping and stuff that you're having responsible fires and being responsible and keeping a lookout for fires.
Yes, great one. And make sure you're following the restrictions. So anyone who likes to go to national forests and places like that, you probably know that a lot of times they end up being closed or they don't allow fires at certain times of year because the fire risk is so high. And so make sure you're obeying those rules. Make sure if you are allowed to have a fire that you make sure it's completely out. You're actually supposed to mix a bunch of water into it and touch or put your hand right above it and make sure it doesn't feel warm. And that's how you know that it's totally not going to cause a forest fire. So yeah, things like that, just don't do anything that's gonna increase the risk, that's gonna cause a fire. Anything else? So that's something you don't even, if you don't have all the answers right now, nobody does, but I'd like you guys to be thinking about this as we get into, or, during this week. And I'm going to send an email with kind of what I want you guys to do and think about before next week. But see if you can come up with any ideas of things that you could do or that your family could do or that New Mexico could do. And we'll share those at the beginning of next week if anyone has any good ideas. Shay, did you want to add something?
What about like artificial rain?
Well, where do we get the rain from? Or the water? I mean, it's a good idea, right? If you make stuff wetter, but then we have to like pump water from somewhere, and then we're taking it out of, the ground or out of a river, or so that could cause problems of its own. But I like your thinking. I like that you're thinking, and sometimes people do that, especially on windy days in New Mexico. They have those like days where at construction sites and things, they have to wet down the ground so the soil doesn't blow everywhere. So there are sometimes that is done, but of course that uses water. And I know I haven't really talked about water much today, but climate change has a big effect on our water too. And I didn't really talk about it because I know that Allison, who's going to be teaching the weeks of the class after me, is going to get a lot into the river and the groundwater and a lot of the water resources. So you guys will learn a lot about that later. And for next week, like I said, we're going to be learning about climate change again, but we're going to be focusing on the animals and the plants and the living things and how they are affected by it and what they do to survive and how they're able to survive as the area or ecosystem around them changes. So again, just watch your emails, have your parents watch your emails. I'll send it to all of you guys with some more resources and with what I want you guys to think about and do before next week. Sarah, anything you want to say? Finish this off?
I don't think so. I'm excited. I hope you guys, as quiet as you all are, I hope you're enjoying it and getting some good information. So just be sure to check your emails. We're going to send some information along. We'll send it to you and to your parents' email that registered you for the class. So just be on the lookout for that. And I just want to thank Fiana. I know she took a lot of time and effort into getting all this data collected for you guys and putting these classes together. So thank you, Fiana.
Yeah, you're welcome. And I'll send you guys some extra things too. So when you get the email, you might have like a bunch of stuff that I'll send if you want to look at them, but don't feel overwhelmed. Don't feel like you have to look at all of it. But I do have some like pre-recorded videos I've made about fire and stuff like that, that if you want to learn a whole lot more, then you can use those.
Oh, I do want to mention too. So this has nothing to do with Fiana's class, but just another opportunity for any of you that might be interested that are closer to the Albuquerque area. We are more than likely going to start putting together some youth conservation crews for this summer. And so giving you the ability to be working outside and earning a little bit of money this summer and really contributing to bettering a space for its for all of it, for the wildlife, for the water, for the land, that the space that we're working on. And so if that's something that interests you, just keep it in the back of your head and I'll keep you guys updated as we know a little bit more. We should know officially before this class is over, whether or not that's going to be happening. And so I'm just throwing it out there as an opportunity just to think about as we move forward. Okay. Cool. Yeah. All right, guys. Well, you guys are awesome. Thanks for coming. Thanks for participating.
Thank you.
If you guys need anything, you can email. Fiana's going to email you, but you guys all have my email too. So if you have questions, just let us know. Okay.
Yep. Feel free to ask me questions directly also. And I'll see you guys next week.
She's so smart. Don't let it go. She's got like so much information in her brain. Make sure you ask
those questions. I could have done a 5-hour class.
Yeah, exactly. All right, guys. Have a good rest of your day.
Bye, guys.
Talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye.